Have you ever stopped to think about the distant future of Earth? Imagine opening your eyes to a completely different world, where countries as we know them today would be united, borders would blur, and entire regions would simply have disappeared or turned into frozen territories. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, doesn't it? But this possibility, contrary to what many people imagine, is not just a fantastic plot. Scientific studies suggest that, in 250 million years, our continents could once again come together into a supercontinent, something as impressive as it is disturbing. And you might even feel a shiver when you think, could the entire coastal zone disappear, turning tourist areas into vast deserts or frozen regions? Could devastating earthquakes and boiling volcanoes make life almost impossible in certain parts of the globe? In this video, we will explore step by step how the movements of tectonic plates could shape this future scenario. Stay with us until the end, because we are going to reveal a twist that could make Brazil one of the major players in this new world map. And I guarantee that you won't want to miss a single detail. To understand what this new Pangaea or next Pangaea will be like, we first need to talk about tectonic plates, which are, in short, large blocks that form the Earth's solid outer layer, the lithosphere. They move very slowly but steadily, and it is this movement that generates earthquakes, forms mountain ranges, and opens and closes oceans. You may not notice it in your day-to-day life, but every time an earthquake is reported in Japan, Chile, or even in certain regions of Brazil, it is a reminder that these giant blocks are in constant activity. It is incredible to think that something so invisible can affect our lives in such a profound way. Some seismologists even warn of the risk of future tremors in areas that we currently consider relatively safe. This makes us think, if earthquakes and volcanic eruptions can happen in our lifetime, imagine in hundreds of millions of years? The process of supercontinent formation is not new. In geological history, we have had several examples of immense blocks of land united. One of the first recorded was the supercontinent Columbia, which existed about 1.8 billion years ago, uniting practically all the continental masses of the time. Over the course of millions of years, Columbia fragmented and gave way to new formations, such as Rodinia, which later also split into several plates. Later, the famous Pangaea emerged, perhaps the best-known supercontinent. To give you an idea, it was from the fragmentation of Pangaea that the continents as we know them today emerged. These events, of course, did not happen overnight. It took millions of years of movement for Pangaea to divide into America, Africa, Eurasia, Oceania, and Antarctica. But what many people don't know is that the coming and going of supercontinents is practically inevitable. One day, everything will tend to come together again. And here comes the point that causes some concern: projections for the future. Scientists from the University of Sydney, among other research centers, have compiled seismic data from the last hundreds of millions of years to understand how and at what speed the continents move. Surprise! They don't always move at the same speed. Sometimes they move only a few millimeters per year. At other times, they can move up to 20 millimeters or more annually, which on a geological scale is a colossal leap. Some models suggest that, around 250 million years from now, all these continents will converge, forming something that has been dubbed New Pangaea or Next Pangaea. But there are also competing theories, such as Orica, Amasia, and Pangaea Ultima, which essentially envision a single large block of land dominating nearly the entire planet. The bottom line is that while we can't be certain of every detail, there is a consensus in the scientific community that, yes, a new supercontinent is very likely. In this projection of the new Pangaea, Brazil would occupy a completely different position on the map. The region that currently has access to the Atlantic Ocean would end up without coastlines, becoming a continental territory. On the other hand, areas that we would never have imagined, such as Antarctica, would be right next to our country. Can you imagine how crazy that would be? Rio de Janeiro, known for its beaches, could be just a few steps away from the Antarctic ice, on an unusual and, in a way, ironic border. And it doesn't stop there. African countries such as Mozambique and Madagascar could come closer to the Brazilian coast, transforming customs, cultures, and even biodiversity into a true hodgepodge. If we already face serious problems of climate adaptation today, imagine facing colossal colds and drastic changes in agriculture and the availability of drinking water. Of course, we're talking about a very distant future, but it is still uncomfortable, almost frightening, to think about how everything we know could be turned upside down. This scenario, however, is not limited to geographical curiosities. It is plausible to assume that, by then, volcanic and seismic activity will have brutally reshaped the Earth's relief. Mountain ranges could become even higher or, on the contrary, erode over time. New mountain ranges would emerge in previously flat regions, while areas that were favorable to agriculture could become inhospitable deserts or frozen zones. Ultimately, certain animal and plant species would undergo radical evolutionary processes, or even mass extinctions, depending on climate and geographic changes. And, if there are still human beings or intelligent species in the future, they would face monumental challenges to survive in these new conditions. As a bonus, we could see the re-emergence of oceans where there is now solid land, and vice versa. After all, the Earth is still alive and in constant transformation. But let's bring a little more reality into this imagination. Take the devastating earthquakes we have already witnessed in countries like Japan and Chile, or the eruption of the Cumbre Vieja volcano on the island of La Palma in 2021. These events show that the Earth's crust is far from stable. Now, scale the scale to millions of years. Everything our civilization has built would be subject to a geologically time-honored tremor. Imagine entire cities buried, skyscrapers splitting in half, islands emerging practically overnight due to volcanic activity. It is undeniable that behind this fascinating phenomenon there is also a terrifying side that exposes the fragility of our existence. The truth is that science brings us this fascination by explaining how the planet renews itself, but it also confronts us with our smallness in the face of the colossal forces of nature. And don't think that these scenarios are just vague assumptions. Much of these studies are based on real data, such as geological mapping, plate displacement rates, and records of past tectonic events. If we look at what happened to Pangaea, we can infer future movements with some logic. After all, the Earth follows cyclical patterns. At the same time, we must accept that predicting something so far away still carries huge margins of uncertainty. New factors, such as impacts from large asteroids or even intense climate change, can accelerate or completely alter the predicted course. However, if we depend only on the planet's natural script, we will indeed see a convergence of continental masses. And it is impressive to see that, at the same time that our technological advances make us feel powerful, nature reminds us that we are walking on an immense jigsaw puzzle that is constantly being rearranged. So, why does all this matter to us today? First of all, understanding this process of supercontinent formation makes us realize how dynamic the planet is. Some people believe that the Earth is immutable, but the opposite is true. It is constantly changing, albeit at a slow pace for humans. This notion is crucial for thinking about environmental preservation, how we deal with natural resources, and how we deal with extreme weather events. Although a scenario of 250 million years seems distant, studies of plate tectonics are already helping with earthquake prevention policies, city planning, and agricultural strategies that take soil fertility into account, for example. Not to mention that curiosity about the future encourages science to continue researching, bringing innovations and solutions to the problems we face today. And now I want to know your opinion. How do you imagine life in a new Pangaea in 250 million years? Do you believe that humanity will still be around to witness this great change, or that other forms of life will take our place? Leave your comment below, because this discussion is incredibly rich and full of possibilities that are both frightening and wonderful at the same time. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the next fascinating topics that science and imagination can provide us. Thank you very much for your company so far, and until next time.